The very best way to assess what's happening in your field this year with corn rootworms is to dig roots and assess larval injury. However, we showed that can be quite labor intensive to literally take roots out of the field and then wash them and rate them. Although we would highly recommend doing that, I think a tactic that could be a bit easier for most people. It's still a little bit labor intensive that you have to do a little bit more walking. It's certainly a bit easier is what we like to refer to as sticky trapping for corn rootworm adults. So we use these yellow sticky cards. There are a few different brands that you could use. The one that I have here is called a Pherecon AM no bait trap. We're not using anything besides the color of the trap to attract the beetles, but you can see that it's quite sticky on the inside. So there's no pheromone, nothing like that. The thing that attracts them is the yellow color. So we use these sticky cards to capture corn rootworm adults, and it'll capture quite a lot of other things as well. We typically try to put out 2 transects in a field. You could do 1 transect, but 2 would give you a more representative sample of the entire field. We usually do 4 or 5 or 6 traps per transect, and we try to space them out quite a bit, walking about 50 meters or 165 feet into a field, putting my first trap, and then along a single row, placing traps every 165 feet. In this field here behind me, I've been monitoring traps for about 4 weeks now, so I think it was the end of June that I started putting traps out. I would usually recommend, if you're not trying to capture the entire emergence period, which is what I'm trying to do, I would recommend that folks start trapping about 2 or 3 weeks after they see the first beetles so that they can try to capture that peak emergence. So we talked earlier about how it's kind of a bell curve of emergence, so we want to catch the peak if we're not catching the entire emergence period. If you're looking to put rootworm traps out, aim for 1 to 2 transects, 4, 5, or 6 traps per transect, spread out across the field, whatever's easiest for access. We swap them out weekly. I usually come every 7 or 10 days, swap these out. So I take the old trap off of the plant, put a new one on. That'll give us an idea of how many beetles are in the field, how that population is changing over time. So let's head out to the field and look at some traps that I've had out for a few days and see what we've caught so far. Okay, so you'll notice that I put out a white flag and some flagging tape, and this is just to help me find my transect because we are literally in the middle of a cornfield and it can be really hard to locate your transect week after week. I just like to put some flagging tape as I go so that I know exactly where I'm supposed to be when I check the traps. So I put this here so that I know to turn this way and start heading down this row. Because we had this giant hole in the middle of this field, I also put some blue tape down here so that I know where my transect ended up being when we crossed that hole. So it's just a few more steps in. Okay, here's the first trap in our transect. So you can tell that we walked a little ways into the field before we even set the first trap up, and that's just because insects in general tend to be really active around the field edge, so we don't really want to put a trap right at the field edge because we're undoubtedly going to catch a lot of insects. So when I put this trap out, what I want to do is kind of put it at ear height, and that's because of some of the things that we chatted about earlier. The beetles are very attracted to the silks. This is usually the center of their activity. If we put it here, we're likely to capture a lot of beetles. So I put it at ear height, I kind of tuck it behind the ear, and then I wrap it around the stalk and just tie it up so that it's not going to go anywhere. This is the first trap. You can see there's all kinds of insect activity around here. I actually put these traps out 2 days ago, and you can see that we've caught a lot of western corn rootworm beetles. Oh, I do see one northern at the bottom there. But when we're actually counting these traps, we don't really care that much about the species. Perhaps we care about the species in terms of just trying to see who's in the field, who might have been feeding on this corn, because as Erin mentioned earlier, that could potentially have some management implications because there are some differences between the species, how we might successfully manage them. So what I would do is I would take this trap off, I would count every corn rootworm beetle that is on this trap, regardless of species. If you wanted to keep track of different species, you certainly could. So you could have a count of westerns and you could have a count of northerns. But really what it comes down to is how many corn rootworm beetles are on this entire trap. So there's also quite a few on this other side. The other information that we need to know is how many traps are in this field. So how many total beetles in this entire field on all of our traps. How many days have these traps been in the field? And that's kind of the basic information that we need to then know how many beetles per trap per day we have. We do have an established threshold, and the current one is that if you have at least 2 beetles, doesn't matter which species, per trap per day in the field, it would be time to switch it up for next year. So there's no recommendation to do anything during the current growing season, but that would be an indication that there are enough beetles in this field that are potentially laying eggs at the base of these plants that could potentially cause problems next year. So we might see a lot of larval feeding next year. And so we would want to try to confuse them and switch it up. If this was going to be corn next year, we would maybe want to use a BT trait if we weren't before. If this is a BT hybrid, we might want to use a soil applied insecticide instead, just to try to confuse them a little bit. Ideally, we could use crop rotation since that will kill most of the beetles that we have in Iowa. Ideally, if you saw this many beetles, we would maybe want to consider switching to a different crop. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this trap here because it's only been here a couple of days, but this is just a little demonstration of how you could put up a rootworm trap if you were hoping to do this in your field. So, like I said, it's sticky on the inside. That's what we actually would like to have on the outside of the trap. When you open it up, you'll see that you have this tab here, and that can be used to secure the trap at the bottom, but we also have this twist tie that can secure the trap at the top. So you can do a few different things with it. You can kind of fold it in half and then just hang it from the stalk. But I think the best way to do it, to keep it the most secure, is to actually put it behind the ear and then wrap it around the stalk. And so then the first thing that I would do is tuck in this little tab, get it secure, and then I usually have to form this a little bit so that it will go through the holes. And then I just kind of tie it loosely to the stalk. It doesn't take too much to get it secure, but that's what a freshly installed trap would look like. And it's fairly simple, except this is only one trap. You would need to continue moving down the line and put up a few more traps in your transect, just like this.